hypocrisy, which is what that is, has an effect on the people around you emotionally. When a person is doing something or saying something that they do not do, it creates a stronger rage in the person who they're talking to actually resist doing what they say. Right? And this is an interesting dynamic that occurs emotionally.
So the first one that's related to Sarah's was when I first started listening to Divine Truth, I wanted to let my kids have their emotions. So I would tell them, you need to have your emotions, but I wasn't doing that. Right?
Yeah.
And so what I feel like what that's done is shut them down more.
Of course, not only does it shut them down more, hypocrisy, which is what that is, has an effect on the people around you emotionally. When a person is doing something or saying something that they do not do, it creates a stronger rage in the person who they're talking to actually resist doing what they say. Right? And this is an interesting dynamic that occurs emotionally, and children are very sensitive to it because they're more sensitive to emotionally to the hypocrisy than an adult is. An adult will put up with your hypocrisy generally, but a child won't generally put up with it. They'll feel it, and then they'll have a reaction. And the reaction is usually one or two reactions. If they feel they can't express to you that you're being a hypocrite, then they'll just go quiet, but they won't do what you want. And then if they feel they can express to you that you're a hypocrite, they'll damn well say that to you. They'll make you know it, and they'll express that. And of course, you would have to admit, wouldn't you, that you are. And so, yes, when you're helping a child after you've learnt truth, and many of you are in the position, aren't you, where you've got children who are growing now, and you hear truth for the very first time, and you go, wow, look at what's happened in what I've taught my children, and that's understandable. Then what you need to learn how to do is to let them have the feelings they have without you trying to control their feelings in any way, including trying to get them to have it.
Yeah, well, that's happened in the last few years now. That's shifted, and I can see that they're having their more feelings, and it's a little bit different. And I also noticed that their friends who had actually more controlling parents were more emotional. Like they were even... Correct.
And also because their friends have a large influence on the children.
Yeah.
So if the children's friends are able to, if your children are able to feel and experience their own emotion, any friends that they have that are sincere friends will feel more inclined to feel their emotions too. Just because of the influence that they have on each other. Yeah. And they'll also feel it as a relief. See, most children feel feeling emotions is a relief. Most adults feel feeling emotions is a trauma. Right? So because of that problem, you've got parents feeling emotions is a trauma, children feeling emotions is a relief. Already there's a lot of opposition between parents and children about emotion under those states. Now, what a lot of parents do is through their attitude and their teachings and their general spiritual beliefs and so forth, slowly the child, by the time the child becomes an adult, many times the child approaches the same stoic attitude of the parent. You follow? And you'll see this happening over years sometimes. And sometimes it can take like 40 years, and eventually the child becomes similarly as stoic as the parent. You follow? And it might have taken that long for that to occur. And a lot of that is because the child, obviously brought up in that environment, doesn't have any confidence in its own ability to cope with its own emotion without there being some external agreement to it feeling that emotion. Right? And this is a very dangerous thing for you in your life and your children in their life. If you cannot handle your own emotion, you are going to become dependent upon other people very rapidly. You're going to end up, listening to gurus, and you're going to end up, being misled by people who say, I can help you avoid your emotion this way, and I can help you avoid it that way. And you can also be misled by things like drugs and alcohol and all of those things as methods to avoid emotion. Because if you don't believe and feel confident within yourself that you can handle yourself, then you end up looking for substances and people to handle things for you. And you'll actually interpret like if Mary comes along, like, let's say I can't handle grief, and Mary comes along and she feels all this commiseration for my grief because she grew up with a dad who was full of grief and he couldn't feel it, and she has all this commiseration for my grief as a male. I'm going to feel she's my partner, she's wonderful, right? So now I become dependent on Mary for me to feel grief. Very dangerous. I need to be able to feel grief for myself, right? Mary needs to be able to feel it for herself. And then when we come together, it won't be like a commiserating emotional response. And also attraction won't be bound by the commiseration. It'll be bound by deeper things about personality and nature instead. A lot of attraction that happens on earth happens just because of there being what I would call dependent emotions. Oh, I'm dependent, I can't handle my grief, and Mary feels sorry for me about it. And I think, oh, she's wonderful for feeling sorry for me about this.
She's the only woman who really loves me.
She's the only woman who really understands me, right? That kind of feeling. And then I feel attracted to her, and even sexually, I will sexually open up towards a woman who has that feeling towards me, right? If I'm in that state where I'm avoiding my own grief, and a woman's in that state where she wants to help a man with his grief, I will feel very sexually attracted to that woman as a result. But none of it's real. It's all...
And that's the sin, right? Like this is where how the emotion becomes like the controlling of your emotion is just so harmful in so many ways.
Yeah, it affects your life now, it affects your relationships right now, all of your friendships right now,
It affects your physical
body right now,
happiness.
and it affects your future.
And your kids' future.
Yeah, the future of people around you are going to be affected by it as well. Particularly anybody who looks at you as an authority. So your children, for example, if you're at work and you're in a position of power at work, like responsibility, anybody looking up to you will be affected by it. It affects so many different areas. In most friendships, there's a level of pecking order in most friendships. Anybody who's in the position of power in the friendship who also, feels bad about feeling emotion, feels attacking about emotion, feels condescending about emotion, ridiculing about emotion, will have a huge effect on every other ones of their friends who look up to them. It affects so many different things. Yeah.
And on that, the controlling emotion, for me, I feel like a lot of my emotions come out at night. Like I usually feel them, not like yesterday, I could feel there was something.
Yep.
But it wasn't until sort of I prayed and I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, oh, there it is. And then I feel it. Is that controlling emotion or is that?
Yeah, it's an example of during the day, most of us feel that we're not in the position or safety, in enough safety to actually feel our emotions constantly. So what we do is we bottle up the emotion for the day, and then when we have a private time, some of us who are a bit more connected will have a private time, and then you'll say, right, now you're allowed to feel it. And then, but the trouble with that is you've already bottled up some. And it's unlikely you're going to get to the bottom of it in that moment, because you've already bottled it up. You've already learned to suppress it under certain circumstances. What the goal is, when you become at one with God, you don't ever bottle up any emotion. Every emotion is experienced as it happens. There is no restriction on what you say and what you do. Of course, when you're at one with God, you're loving, and so everything you say and do is going to be fine, right? It's going to be loving. But that's the place you're aiming for. The place you're aiming for is you've got to be real about everything you feel in the moment you feel it. Yeah. Now, you can see society is very against that as an idea or concept on earth. In celestial society is very for that. That's one reason why the celestial spirit world is so beautiful. But on earth, it's very against that. And in fact, most places that are governed by sin are against this process of expressing any emotion other than anger, fear, resentment, hatred, shame, these kind of emotions. Other than that, most people are against expressing any emotion as it happens.
Even happiness.
Yeah,
About
even
being
happiness.
too happy.
People get very jealous on earth about somebody being too happy and very angry, and the average person will project a lot of rage at that person who's happy, and also on earth people project very strongly if you have any level of self-confidence. They project a lot of very angry emotions about a person who has any level of self-awareness or self-confidence. And so they get very angry about that as well. And so there's a lot of methods on earth used to control a person who sort of exceeds the boundaries of what emotions are socially acceptable. Yeah. Okay, if we come over there and then.
Does feeling emotion always equals crying necessarily? Or because sometimes I feel like I process stuff, but I might just be laying in the dirt for 1 hour and like staring at the sky and like feeling like a mess and having like maybe like I don't know, like sometimes I feel like convulsion almost. And then I kick stuff and then but then sometimes I don't have like the real grief, but I feel like I've done something. Is it possible?
Well, every emotion is designed by God to be felt completely. So if you're sad, naturally you will be crying. So when I say sad, I mean grief or terrible. What's the word we could use to describe sort of the depths of despair, right? You're going to be crying. There's going to be times when you have that, and there's also going to be times when you feel ashamed and other emotions, but those kind of emotions are fear-based emotions, so you're going to have to go through fear as well as something else to feel that. So an example of shame is like, let's say, when I was young and I engaged in some sexual play with, a neighbour or something like that, and we're both the same age or a similar age, and somebody found us doing it and really shamed us for it, like mum found us and then shamed us for it, then you'll probably have some sexual shame to deal with. Now, the sexual shame will have a layer of terror over it, which is the attack coming from your mother, the terror of that attack, and the withdrawal of love in that moment. And then underneath that will be some grief about how that's affected your life. So how you experience your emotions is going to depend on what emotion it is. And